smoke still rose from the broken buildings. Daehyun moved carefully through the rubble, his boots crunching on shattered glass and twisted metal. 3 days had passed since the Velthians evacuated this colony. 3 days since they left everything behind in their rush to escape. He stopped and listened. The wind howled through empty streets. No voices, no movement. Just the sound of debris settling and the distant groan of unstable structures ready to collapse. Daehyun adjusted his pack. His mission was simple. Scout the area, gather supplies, report back to Firebase Nexus. The human base needed medicine, ammunition, anything useful left behind. The war had been brutal, and resources were scarce. He entered what looked like a medical center. The front wall had collapsed, revealing rooms filled with overturned equipment. Broken monitors flickered with dying power, papers scattered across floors stained with. He didn't want to know. That's when he heard it. A soft sound almost like breathing. Maybe just the wind. Maybe his imagination playing tricks after too many days alone. But Daehyun didn't survive this long by ignoring his instincts. He moved toward the sound, weapon ready. In the back corner, behind a fallen shelf, something glowed faintly in the darkness. Bioluminescent patterns, purple and blue lights pulsing weakly across gray skin. A Velthian. Daehyun moved closer. Not an adult. A young female, maybe 16 in human years. She was curled up, shivering despite the heat. Her eyes were closed and her breathing came in shallow gasps. She was dying. Daehyun knelt beside her. The smart thing would be to leave. The Velthians weren't allies, just temporary partners against a common enemy. Taking her back to base would raise questions. Use resources. Create complications. He reached out and touched her shoulder. Her eyes snapped open, deep violet, filled with terror. She tried to scramble away but was too weak. Her hand moved to something at her neck, a broken translator device that sparked uselessly. Daehyun held up both hands, showing he was unarmed. He spoke slowly, even though she couldn't understand. Sometimes tone mattered more than words. The girl stared at him. Her patterns flickered faster, cycling through colors he'd never seen before. Fear, confusion. He had no idea how Velthian biology worked. He pointed to himself. Then to her. Then to the exit. His gestures were clumsy, but the message was clear. I'm getting you out of here. She shook her head violently. Tried to speak, but only weak sounds came out. Her translator sparked again, showing random symbols before dying completely. Daehyun sighed. He didn't have time for this. Every minute here increased the danger. But he couldn't just walk away. Not from someone who needed help. He pulled out his canteen and offered it to her. She stared at it like it might explode. After a long moment, she took it with trembling hands and drank. The water seemed to help. Her breathing steadied slightly. Daehyun made his decision. He gently lifted her. She was lighter than expected. Her body frail from days without food or water. She tensed in his arms but didn't fight. Maybe she was too weak. Maybe she understood she had no choice. He carried her out of the medical center and into the dying light of evening. The journey back to Firebase Nexus would take hours on foot. In the open. With a glowing alien girl who might attract every scavenger and mercenary in the sector. Brilliant plan, Daehyun thought. They moved through the ruins slowly. The girl's bioluminescence dimmed as exhaustion took over. Daehyun wrapped her in his jacket, trying to hide the glow. It helped, but not much. Halfway through their journey, she touched his chest. Her hand was cold. She looked up at him with those violet eyes, questioning.
Why are you doing this?
Daehyun wished he could explain. Wished she could understand that humans don't leave people behind. That's what made them different. Maybe crazy, maybe stupid, but different. He just kept walking. As night fell completely, sounds echoed across the wasteland. Engines in the distance. Searchlights cutting through the darkness. Someone was out there scanning the ruins. Mercenaries had to be. They always followed after evacuations, looking for salvage and easy prey. Daehyun ducked into a collapsed transit tunnel. The girl's glow was brighter now, reflecting off the tunnel walls. He set her down gently and checked his equipment. 1 rifle, 2 spare magazines, 3 grenades. Not much if they were found. The searchlight swept closer. Voices carried on the wind, speaking in a language he didn't recognize. The girl heard them too. Her patterns flashed bright red, pure terror. Daehyun put a finger to his lips. Universal sign for quiet. She understood that much and nodded. covering her own mouth with both hands. They waited in silence. Minutes stretched like hours. The mercenaries passed by the tunnel entrance, their vehicles kicking up dust and debris. One paused nearby, its sensors sweeping the area. Dae-hyun held his breath. The girl pressed against the tunnel wall, trying to make herself smaller, her bioluminescence dimmed to almost nothing, as if she could control it through sheer willpower. The vehicle moved on. They stayed hidden for another hour before Dae-hyun risked moving again. The girl was barely conscious now, her body shutting down from exhaustion and dehydration. He lifted her once more and continued toward the fire base. Dawn was breaking when they finally reached the perimeter. Human guards spotted them immediately, weapons raised until they recognized Dae-hyun. Then they saw what he was carrying and their expressions changed. One guard, a young private, stared openly.
"A Velthian here?"
Dae-hyun walked past without explanation. He went straight to the medical bay and set the girl down on a cot. She looked up at him one last time before unconsciousness took her. The base medic, Hanul, rushed over. She took one look at the Velthian girl and then at Dae-hyun. Her expression asked 1,000 questions. "Can you help her?" Dae-hyun asked. Hanul hesitated only a moment. Then she nodded and got to work. Dae-hyun stepped back and watched as Hanul connected monitors and started an IV line. The girl's bioluminescent patterns pulsed weakly but steadily. She was alive. For now. Captain Yoonji appeared in the doorway, her face stern. Her office, now. Dae-hyun nodded. He knew this conversation was coming. Knew he'd have to explain why he brought an alien into their base. Why he risked everything for someone who wasn't even human. But as he left the medical bay, he glanced back at the girl one more time. Her patterns had stabilized to a soft blue glow. Peaceful. Safe. That's what mattered. Captain Yoonji's office was small and cramped, like everything else in Firebase Nexus. Maps covered the walls. Reports piled high on the desk. The smell of recycled air mixed with coffee that had been sitting too long. She didn't invite Dae-hyun to sit. Just stared at him with tired eyes that had seen too much war. "Explain," she said simply. Dae-hyun told her everything. The medical center, the dying girl, the decision to bring her back. He didn't try to justify it or make excuses, just stated the facts. When he finished, Yoonji was quiet for a long time. She walked to the window and looked out at the base. Soldiers moved between buildings. Guards watched the perimeter. Everyone doing their job, following orders. "Do you know what you've done?" she asked without turning around. "We have limited supplies, limited space. And now we're harboring a Velthian who might be wanted by someone dangerous enough to hire mercenaries." "I know," Dae-hyun said. "Then why?" "Because she needed help. Because no one else would." Yoonji turned to face him. Her expression was hard to read. Anger, respect? Maybe both. "You're a good soldier, Dae-hyun. But good soldiers follow orders. They don't bring complications back to base." "With respect, Captain," Dae-hyun said quietly. "I'd rather be a good person than a good soldier." The silence stretched between them. Finally, Yoonji sighed and sat down at her desk. "She stays until Hanul clears her medically. Then we figure out what to do with her." "Understood?" "Understood, and Dae-hyun, if this brings trouble to my base, it's on you." "Yes, Captain." 2 days passed. The girl, Liara, as they learned from her damaged ID chip, recovered slowly. Hanul worked tirelessly, learning Velthian biology on the fly. The base medical database had some information, but not much. Dae-hyun visited when he could, between patrols and duties. Liara watched him with those violet eyes, still wary but less terrified. Her bioluminescent patterns had stabilized to soft blues and greens, which Hanul said meant she was healing. On the 3rd day, Hanul came to find Dae-hyun during his lunch break. Her expression was troubled. "I need to show you something," she said. They went to the medical bay. Hanul pulled up scan results on her tablet. The images meant nothing to Dae-hyun, just colored shapes and numbers. These markers here, Hanul pointed to specific areas. They indicate genetic patterns. Very specific ones, meaning Liara isn't just some random Velthian. She's royalty. These markers only appear in the old bloodlines, the ones that ruled before the consensus was formed. Dae-hyun stared at the scans. That explained why mercenaries were hunting her, why her own people left her behind. In politics, an inconvenient heir was often better off dead. "Does she know?" he asked. "I don't think so. Or maybe she does and hasn't told us. Her translator is still being repaired. When will it be ready?" Today, I've been working with the engineers. It should function well enough for basic communication. That afternoon, Liara spoke her first words in a language Dae-hyun could understand. Why? She asked. Her voice was soft, carried through the translator with a slight mechanical echo. Why did you save me? Dae-hyun sat beside her cot. He'd been asked this question before by Yoonji, by other soldiers, but hearing it from Liara herself was different. Because you needed help, he said. But I'm not human. I'm not your people, doesn't matter. Her patterns flickered confused colors. It matters to everyone else. My convoy left me. The evacuation ships didn't wait. When I fell behind, they just went, I'm sorry that happened to you, why? You didn't do it. Her voice carried genuine confusion. Among my people, we calculate survival. If saving one person risks many, we leave the one. It's logical, maybe, but humans don't work that way. We have this saying, no one gets left behind even when it's dangerous. Even when it doesn't make sense? Especially then. Liara was quiet for a long moment. Her patterns shifted through colors Dae-hyun was starting to recognize. Thoughtful blues, uncertain purples. Your species is strange, she finally said. Yeah, we get that a lot. That night, alarms woke the entire base. Dae-hyun rushed to his post and saw the comms officer frantically working at her station. What's happening? Yoonji demanded. Velthian distress beacon, close. Maybe 5 kilometers out. The captain frowned. Patch me through. The message played over speakers. A Velthian voice, desperate and afraid, stranded, under attack, requesting immediate assistance. It could be legitimate, one officer said, or a trap, another countered. They know we have the girl. Hanul arrived with Liara, who insisted on coming to the command center. She listened to the message, her patterns flashing rapid reds and golds. It's not real, Liara said quietly. The dialect is wrong. The stress patterns. No Velthian speaks like that under true distress. You're sure? Yoonji asked. Completely. Someone wants you to send soldiers out there, into an ambush. The command center fell silent. Then one of the officers spoke up. If that's true, then they know she's here. They're testing us. All eyes turned to Liara. She stood straighter, trying not to show fear. I'll leave tonight. That way they'll follow me and leave you alone. No, Dae-hyun said immediately. But I'm endangering everyone. The logical choice is, we don't abandon people, Dae-hyun interrupted, remember? That's what humans do. Yoonji looked around the room at her officers and crew. Some looked uncertain. Others nodded slowly. She took a deep breath. We put it to a vote. All personnel with over 1 year's service. The question is simple. Do we protect Liara or turn her over? The vote took an hour. When the results came back, it wasn't even close. 73% voted to protect her. Liara stared at the numbers, her patterns cycling through colors so fast they almost blurred. I don't understand. You barely know me. Why would so many risk themselves? Hanul smiled. Because Dae-hyun showed us you're worth saving, and because it's the right thing to do. For the first time since arriving at the base, Liara's patterns glowed warm gold, the Velthian color for gratitude. But outside the walls, in the darkness beyond, mercenary forces were gathering. The real test was still to come. The attack came at dawn. Not subtle, not quiet, just overwhelming force. Explosions rocked the eastern wall of Firebase Nexus. Alarms screamed. Soldiers scrambled to defensive positions. Dae-hyun was already running toward the command center when the second wave hit. Mercenaries, lots of them. Professional-grade armor and weapons. This wasn't a probe or a test. This was a full assault. Yoonji was already barking orders when Dae-hyun arrived. She looked at him and didn't waste words. Get the girl out. Use the underground tunnels. Head for extraction point, Beta Captain. I should stay and fight. That's an order, Corporal. She's the target. Get her clear and we can focus on defense. Take Hanul with you. Dae-hyun saluted and ran to the medical bay. Liara was already awake, her patterns flashing fear reds. Hanul was packing supplies with practiced efficiency. We're leaving, Dae-hyun said. Now. They'll die because of me, Liara whispered. All of them, they're fighting because it's right. Not because they have to. That's the difference. Another explosion, closer this time. The walls shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Come on, Hanul said, shouldering her medical pack. I know where the tunnel entrance is. They moved through corridors filled with running soldiers. No one stopped them. Everyone had their own job to do. The tunnel entrance was hidden in the storage level, behind crates of supplies. Hanul pulled open a floor hatch. Metal stairs descended into darkness. The air that rose up was cold and smelled of damp earth. "It's 40 kilometers to extraction point Beta," Hanul said. "Should take us 8 hours if we move fast. If nothing goes wrong," Daehyun added. They climbed down and sealed the hatch behind them. Daehyun activated his helmet light. The tunnel stretched ahead, carved through rock and reinforced with metal supports. Old mining infrastructure repurposed for escape routes. They walked in silence for the first hour. Behind them, the muffled sounds of battle gradually faded. Ahead was only darkness and the echo of their footsteps. Liara's bioluminescence provided extra light, painting the tunnel walls in shifting purples and blues. She kept glancing back as if she could still see the fire base through solid rock. "They'll be okay," Hanul said gently. "Captain Yoonji knows what she's doing. I hope you're right." The tunnel branched several times. Daehyun checked his navigation device at each junction, making sure they stayed on course. Some passages showed signs of recent collapse. Others were flooded with shallow water that splashed around their boots. 3 hours in, they found the first body. A mercenary scout, dead for maybe a day. His equipment was stripped, but his armor showed burn marks. Someone had killed him and moved on. "They know about the tunnels," Hanul said quietly. Daehyun checked his rifle. "Stay alert. Could be more ahead." They moved more carefully now. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every sound echoed with potential danger. 4 hours in, the tunnel started to shake. Not an explosion. Something else. A deep rumbling that came from everywhere at once. "Seismic activity," Hanul said. "These planets on the sector edge are unstable. We need to move faster." They broke into a jog. Behind them, support beams groaned under stress. Dust and small rocks fell from the ceiling. The shaking grew worse. There, Daehyun pointed ahead. An emergency exit marker glowed faintly on the wall. They reached the exit just as a section of tunnel collapsed behind them. The blast of dust and debris knocked them forward. Daehyun grabbed Liara and pulled her through the doorway. Hanul followed, coughing. They climbed a ladder to the surface and emerged into harsh sunlight. They were in a canyon system, rocky walls rising on both sides. The extraction point was still 20 kilometers away, and they were no longer alone. 3 mercenaries stood 50 meters away, weapons ready. They must have been tracking heat signatures or waiting for anyone to emerge from the tunnel system. "Run," Daehyun said calmly. "Both of you." "I'll hold them off." "No," Liara started to say. "Go!" Hanul grabbed Liara's arm and pulled her into a run. They disappeared around a rock formation just as the mercenaries opened fire. Daehyun dove behind cover and returned fire. 3 against 1. Not great odds, but he'd faced worse. He pulled one of his grenades, counted 3 seconds, and threw it. The explosion scattered the mercenaries. Daehyun used the confusion to relocate, moving between rocks with practiced speed. The mercenaries were good, professionals, but they expected a standard soldier. Someone who would fight by the book? Daehyun didn't fight by any book. He used the terrain, used shadows, made them come to him. When one got too close, Daehyun took him down with a combination of rifle fire and hand-to-hand combat. The mercenary went down hard, 2 left. But now they were cautious, coordinating, trying to flank him. Daehyun checked his ammunition. 1 magazine left. Not enough for a prolonged fight. Then he heard it. A sound that made his blood run cold. Hanul screaming. He forgot about tactics and ran toward the sound. Found them at the base of a cliff. Hanul was down, clutching her side where a plasma bolt had burned through her armor. Liara was trying to drag her to safety while a 4th mercenary advanced on them. Daehyun didn't hesitate. He charged the mercenary, tackling him before he could fire again. They went down in a tangle of limbs and weapons. The mercenary was stronger, but Daehyun was desperate. The fight was brutal and short. When it ended, Daehyun was covered in blood and the mercenary wasn't moving. The other 2 mercenaries appeared on the cliff above. They had clear shots. This was it. Then Liara stood up. Her patterns blazed bright red, brighter than Daehyun had ever seen. She looked up at the mercenaries and her mouth moved in words he couldn't hear. The mercenaries grabbed their heads and screamed. They dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. Whatever Liara was doing to them telepathically, it wasn't pleasant. After 10 seconds, they collapsed unconscious. Liara's patterns faded back to normal. She swayed and Daehyun caught her before she fell. I've never done that before, she whispered. I didn't know I could. You saved us, Hanul groaned. Daehyun set Liara down gently and went to the medic. The wound was bad but not fatal if they could get her proper treatment soon. Hanul looked up at him with pain-filled eyes. She took a hit for me, she said quietly. Pushed me out of the way. Daehyun glanced at Liara, who was sitting with her back against a rock, exhausted. The alien girl who'd been abandoned by her own people had just sacrificed herself for a human she barely knew. He pulled out his emergency medical kit and got to work. They still had 15 kilometers to go. Hanul couldn't walk. Liara was barely conscious from telepathic exhaustion, but Daehyun had carried wounded soldiers through worse terrain. He could do this, he had to. The relay station sat abandoned on a hill, its antenna array pointing uselessly at the sky. Daehyun carried Hanul through the broken entrance while Liara followed close behind. Inside was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered weakly, but there was power, and power meant life support systems might still work. Daehyun set Hanul down gently in what used to be a control room. Her breathing was shallow but steady. The wound had been stabilized, but she needed real medical attention soon. Liara collapsed against a wall, her patterns dim from exhaustion. Using her telepathy as a weapon had drained her completely. Daehyun checked the station's systems. Most were dead, but the backup computer was still running on stored power, and it was connected to the old Velthian network. He called Liara over. Can you access this? Maybe find out what's really going on. She nodded slowly and placed her hands on the console. Her patterns pulsed in rhythm with the computer's displays. Velthian technology was partly telepathic, designed to interface directly with their minds. Minutes passed. Liara's expression changed from concentration to confusion to horror. What is it? Daehyun asked. She pulled her hands away from the console like it had burned her. Records, communications, orders, all here. Tell me. Liara's voice shook. My convoy didn't leave me by accident. It was ordered. By Elder Therix, one of the consensus leaders. He commanded them to abandon me specifically. Why would he do that? Because of what I am. She looked down at her hands. The scans Hanul took were right. I carry the royal bloodline markers. Not just any markers. The complete sequence. I'm the only legitimate heir to the old throne. Daehyun processed this information. So Therix wanted you dead. The war created chaos. Perfect cover for eliminating inconvenient heirs. Without me, he can claim emergency powers. Restructure the consensus under his control. Her patterns flickered angry reds. My own people tried to kill me. Not the enemy. Not some random violence. My own leaders, I'm sorry, why? You didn't do this. She looked at him with those violet eyes. You saved me when my own kind wanted me dead. Why do humans care so much? Daehyun sat down beside her. We have our own history. Wars, betrayals, times when people were abandoned because of who they were or what they represented. I guess we learned that leaving people behind only creates more pain, but you still lose people. Hanul is hurt. Your firebase was attacked. People died because you helped me. Maybe, but if we'd left you, we'd have lost something worse. Our humanity. The part that makes us worth saving in the first place. Liara was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, what would you do? If you were me? Daehyun thought about it. I'd go back. Expose the truth. Fight for what's right, even if it's dangerous. Even if I might die. Especially then. Running doesn't make you safe. It just means you're running forever. Hanul stirred behind them. Her eyes opened. Hey, did someone mention dying? Because I have opinions about that. Daehyun went to her side. How are you feeling? Like I got shot. Because I did. But I'll live. The medical stims are working. Liara knelt beside the injured medic. I'm sorry. This is my fault, Hanul managed a weak smile. Not your fault someone decided to shoot at us. Besides, you saved us with that telepathy thing. Pretty impressive. I've never used it as a weapon before. My people taught me telepathy is for communication, not violence. Sometimes you need to break the rules to survive, Hanul said. Trust me, as a medic, I know all about bending rules when lives are at stake. Daehyun checked his communication device. Still no signal from Firebase Nexus. He didn't know if they'd held off the attack or been overrun. The not knowing was the worst part. We need to keep moving, he said. Get to the extraction point. Get Hanul proper medical attention. And then what? Liara asked. I run, hide, wait for Therix to find me again? That's your choice. But whatever you decide, we'll help you. Why? She asked it again. The question that seemed to define everything. Why do you keep helping? Hanyul answered before Daehyun could. Because someone has to. Because if we don't stand up for what's right, who will? Liara stood up. Her patterns shifted through thoughtful colors. I want to go back. To Velthara Prime. To expose Therix and what he's done. That's a suicide mission, Daehyun said flatly. Maybe. But you said running means running forever. I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of hiding. If I have this bloodline, this power, maybe I should use it. Not for myself. For all the Velthians who've been abandoned like I was. Daehyun looked at her. Really looked. The terrified girl he'd found in the ruins was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who'd learned from humans that fear doesn't have to control you. Okay, he said. Then we help you do it right. Hanyul groaned. Can we help her after I get actual medical attention? My side really hurts. They spent the night at the relay station. Daehyun took first watch while Liara downloaded everything she could from the database. Evidence, communications, proof of Therix's conspiracy. In the early morning hours, Liara approached Daehyun at the window where he stood guard. Can I show you something? She asked. Through telepathy. It would help you understand my people better. Is it safe? Yes, I'll just share memories and thoughts. A bridge between our minds. Daehyun hesitated only a moment. Then he nodded. Okay. Liara placed her hands on either side of his head. Her patterns glowed softly. Then the world changed. Daehyun saw through her eyes, felt through her emotions. He experienced the moment of abandonment, watching the evacuation ships leave while she ran toward them, screaming. The cold calculation in the pilot's eyes as they sealed the doors. But she also showed him her first moments of safety. The feeling when she realized Daehyun meant no harm. The confusion when humans kept helping despite having no logical reason to do so. The growing understanding that maybe survival wasn't just about cold calculation. The connection worked both ways. Liara gasped as she touched Daehyun's memories. The Battle of Thres 9, watching his entire unit die while he survived. The crushing guilt. The nightmares. The determination to never let anyone else die if he could prevent it. She saw how much trauma he carried, how it would have broken most people. But humans seemed to turn their pain into purpose, their losses into resolve. When the connection ended, they both sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Liara spoke. I understand now. You don't help me despite your pain. You help me because of it, because you know what it's like to be abandoned by circumstances, something like that. Her patterns glowed warm gold. Among my people, that level of trauma would be considered a fatal weakness. We'd expect you to collapse or retreat. But humans carry their scars and keep moving forward anyway. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing I've ever seen. Dawn broke outside. They had a long journey ahead. But for the first time, Liara felt like she truly understood the strange, stubborn species that had saved. Kessler Station floated in the void like a rusty crown. Once a thriving trade hub, it was now a refuge for those who had nowhere else to go. Smugglers, refugees, people running from wars they didn't start. Daehyun guided their small transport ship into a docking bay. Hanyul sat in the co-pilot seat, still recovering but much better after proper medical treatment at the extraction point. Liara stood behind them, watching the station grow larger through the viewport. This place looks dangerous, she said. It is, Daehyun replied. But it's also neutral ground. No government control, no military presence. Perfect for finding help outside official channels or getting killed in an alley. Hanyul laughed. Always looking on the bright side, aren't you? They docked and entered the station. The air smelled of oil, cooking food, and too many species living in close quarters. The main corridor was crowded with beings from a dozen different worlds. Some stared at Liara's bioluminescent patterns. Most minded their own business. Daehyun led them to a market district. Vendors sold everything from weapons to medical supplies to questionable food. He stopped at a stall run by a gray-skinned alien with too many eyes. Looking for Velthians, Daehyun said. Refugees, exiles. Know where they gather? The vendor studied them. 2 humans and a glowing Velthian. Interesting combination. He pointed down a side corridor. Section 7, the abandoned residential quarter. That's where your people hide, girl. They're not my people, Liara said quietly. Not anymore. The vendor's many eyes blinked in what might have been sympathy. Then they're exactly where you need to go. Section 7 was dimly lit and quiet. The residential pods had been abandoned when the station fell into disrepair. Now they housed those who couldn't afford better, or didn't want to be found. They found the Velthians in a large communal space, about 20 of them, ranging from elderly to young adults. Their bioluminescent patterns were muted, dimmed by exhaustion or despair. Everyone tensed when the humans entered. But when they saw Liara, confusion rippled through the group. An elderly Velthian male stepped forward. His patterns flickered orange with surprise. Those bloodline markers. You're of the royal line, Liara nodded. My name is Liara. I was abandoned during the evacuation of Thres 9. Murmurs spread through the group. Everyone here had similar stories. Left behind. Deemed not worth saving. Forced to survive on the edges of civilization. Why are you here, the elder asked. With humans? Liara looked at Daehyun and Hanul. They saved me, risked everything to keep me safe, and they helped me learn the truth. She told them about Therix, about the conspiracy, about how their own leaders had ordered her death and orchestrated countless abandonments to consolidate power. The Velthians listened in silence. When she finished, an older female spoke up. We suspected something was wrong. Too many coincidences. Too many left behind who should have been saved. But we had no proof. I have proof now, Liara said, downloaded from an old relay station. Everything we need to expose Therix. A younger male laughed bitterly. And what good will that do? We're exiles, abandoned. Nobody listens to those who don't matter. You matter, Liara said firmly. Every single one of you matters. That's what humans taught me. That abandoning people because it's convenient or logical is wrong. That we're stronger when we stand together. More murmurs. Some confused. Some skeptical. Velthian culture didn't work this way. Individual lives were calculated against collective survival. Daehyun stepped forward. I know I'm an outsider, but I've seen what happens when people give up on each other. When survival becomes the only goal, you lose more than lives. You lose what makes life worth living. Hanul added, We're going to Velthara Prime, to expose Tharix and bring truth to your people. You can come with us, or stay here, but at least consider that maybe you're not the ones who were wrong to expect loyalty. The elder studied them for a long time. His patterns cycled through thoughtful colors. Finally, he spoke. I am Kelrix. I served in the old royal guard before the consensus. I've lived too long watching our people forget the values that made us strong. He looked at Liara. If you're truly going to challenge Therix, you'll need more than evidence. You'll need witnesses. People who can speak to what was lost when we chose calculation over compassion. Will you come, Liara asked. I will. And I believe others will too. Over the next hour, more Velthians agreed to join. Not all, some were too broken or afraid. But 12 stepped forward, ready to return to a world that had abandoned them. As they prepared to leave, alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red. The station's speakers crackled with a warning. Armed forces detected approaching. All residents seek shelter. Daehyun checked his scanner. Multiple ships. Heavily armed. This wasn't a patrol. This was an assault force. They found us, Hanul said. The mercenaries. It had to be. Therix must have hired an entire fleet to track down Liara. Kelrix looked at the group. We need to evacuate now. The station descended into chaos. People ran in every direction. Ships launched from docking bays in desperate escape attempts. Some made it. Many didn't. The mercenary ships had the exits covered. Daehyun led their group through maintenance corridors. The sounds of weapons fire echoed through the walls. Mercenaries were boarding the station, searching deck by deck. We're trapped, one of the younger Velthians said. There's no way out. There's always a way, Daehyun said. We just have to find it. Hanul pulled up station schematics on her datapad. There. Emergency shuttle bay. It's small. Designed for station crew during disasters. They moved quickly through the darkened corridors. Behind them, the sounds of combat grew closer. The mercenaries were sweeping toward their position. They reached the emergency bay to find 6 small shuttles, barely big enough for 3 people each. Not enough for everyone. We'll have to squeeze in, Kelrick said. It'll be uncomfortable, but possible. As they loaded into the shuttles, mercenaries burst into the bay. Heavy weapons, combat armor, at least 20 soldiers. Get the shuttles launched, Daehyun shouted. I'll buy you time. No, Liara grabbed his arm. Not again. I'm not letting anyone else sacrifice themselves for me. Then we fight together. The Velthian exiles who had agreed to come stepped forward too. Kelrix drew an old weapon from beneath his coat. The young fighters took positions behind cover. The battle was fierce and desperate. Daehyun used every trick he knew. The Velthians fought with surprising skill, old training coming back. Hanul provided covering fire while coordinating shuttle launches, and Liara unleashed her telepathy, not on one or two enemies, but all of them. The mercenaries screamed and clutched their heads. Some collapsed. Others retreated in blind panic. One by one, the shuttles launched. Finally, only one remained. Daehyun, Hanul, and Liara backed toward it, still firing. They scrambled inside. Daehyun hit the launch controls. The shuttle blasted away from the station just as more mercenary forces arrived. Behind them, Kessler Station burned. But ahead, 6 small shuttles flew in formation toward a single destination, Velthera Prime, the homeworld. This time they weren't running. They were coming home to fight. Velthera Prime gleamed like a jewel in space. Crystalline towers rose from floating islands connected by bridges of light. Gardens bloomed in impossible colors. It should have been beautiful. Instead, Liara saw only the scars. Burn marks on towers, empty gardens. The wounds of war and corruption. Their small fleet of shuttles approached the planet. Daehyun expected defenses to challenge them. Instead, nothing. The planetary shields were down. The orbital stations abandoned or destroyed. Therix has consolidated power, Kelrix said from another shuttle over the comm. The military serves him now. This will be more difficult than we thought. When has anything been easy, Hanul muttered. They landed on the outskirts of the capital city. The plan was simple. Broadcast Liara's evidence across all networks during a consensus session. Force Therix to answer publicly. Let the people decide. Simple. Not easy. The city was eerily quiet. Citizens moved through streets with heads down. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Therix's guards patrolled everywhere, watching for dissent. Daehyun led the group through back alleys and maintenance tunnels. Kelrix knew the city well from his years serving the Royal Guard. He guided them toward the consensus chamber, a massive crystal structure at the city's heart. They reached a service entrance. Guards stood watch, 4 of them armed and alert. I can handle this, Liara said telepathically without violence. She closed her eyes. Her patterns pulsed in slow, calming waves. The guards suddenly looked confused. Then peaceful. They walked away from their posts, not remembering why they were there or what they were supposed to be guarding. Inside the building, they found a network terminal. Hanul worked quickly, her fingers flying across controls. I'm uploading the evidence to every major system. News feeds, government channels, private networks. Everyone will see it. How long, Daehyun asked. 5 minutes. Maybe less if their security detects what I'm doing. They didn't have 5 minutes. Alarms started blaring. Security forces poured into the building. Therix knew they were here. Keep uploading, Daehyun ordered. We'll hold them off. The Velthian exiles took defensive positions. Kelrix moved like he was young again, years of training returning. The younger fighters followed his lead. Daehyun fought alongside them. Human tactics mixed with Velthian coordination created something new, something effective. The security forces expected standard resistance. They got chaos and adaptation instead. Upload complete, Hanul shouted. It's broadcasting everywhere. Across the planet, screens lit up with evidence. Communications showing Therix ordering abandonments. Financial records proving corruption. Testimony from those he'd betrayed. The proof was overwhelming, but Therix wasn't finished. He appeared on every screen, his image overriding the evidence. His voice was cold and commanding. Citizens of Velthara Prime. This false evidence is spread by traitors and aliens. The girl you see is a pretender, a tool of human manipulation. Do not believe their lies. Liara stepped forward. She looked at the nearest camera, her voice steady despite her fear. My name is Liara. I carry the complete royal bloodline. Elder Therix ordered my death because I threaten his power. But I didn't come back for revenge. I came back to show you what we've lost. She gestured to Daehyun and the others. These humans risked everything to save me. Not because they had to. Not because it was logical. But because they believed I mattered. That every life matters. When did we forget that? Therix's face twisted with rage. He cut the feeds. But the damage was done. Across the city, citizens looked at each other, questioning, doubting, wondering. More security forces arrived. These were Therix's personal guard, elite soldiers loyal only to him. They formed a wall between the group and any escape route. And then Therix himself arrived. He was old but still powerful. His patterns blazed with authority and anger. "You should have stayed dead, girl," he said to Liara. "You would have been remembered as a tragic casualty of war. Now you'll be remembered as a traitor who died trying to destroy our people." Liara stepped forward. "I challenge you, telepathically. Let our people witness the truth through our minds." Therix smiled. "It wasn't kind. You're young, untrained. I've spent decades mastering telepathic combat. You cannot win, maybe not, but I have something you don't. And what is that? Hope." The telepathic duel began, invisible to most observers. But those with telepathic sensitivity could feel it. A clash of minds, a battle of wills. Therix attacked with cold efficiency, decades of experience, perfect technique. He tore through Liara's defenses, trying to break her mind. But Liara had something he couldn't account for. Memories of kindness. Images of Dae-hyun carrying her through ruins. Hanul risking her life. Human soldiers voting to protect a stranger. All the illogical, beautiful moments of compassion she'd witnessed. These memories became armor. Therix's attacks broke against them. How could cynicism defeat hope? How could calculation defeat the simple truth that people matter? Liara pushed back. Not with violence. With understanding. She showed Therix his own fear. His terror of losing power. His loneliness. The emptiness of a life spent manipulating others. And she showed him an alternative. A future where Velthians learned from humans. Where individual lives mattered as much as collective survival. Where being left behind was unthinkable. Therix screamed. Not in pain. In rage at what he was seeing. The truth he'd spent years hiding from himself. That his way had made their people weaker, not stronger. He collapsed. The telepathic connection broadcast across the city through technology Kelrix had activated. Every Velthian saw what Liara had shown. Saw Therix's corruption, his fear, his betrayal. And they saw something else. The moments of human compassion. Dae-hyun's determination. Hanul's sacrifice. The fire-base crew voting to protect a stranger. The security forces lowered their weapons. Citizens poured into the streets. Not in violence, in relief. In recognition of something they'd lost and were now remembering. Therix's remaining loyalists arrested him. The evidence was overwhelming. The telepathic proof undeniable. Liara stood in the consensus chamber, surrounded by exiles who'd come home, and citizens who were ready for change. She looked at Dae-hyun. "I couldn't have done this without you." Dae-hyun smiled. "You did it yourself. You just needed someone to show you it was possible." Hanul appeared beside them, tired but grinning. "So what happens now?" Kelrix approached with other members of the old consensus. "Now we rebuild. The right way." With Liara's guidance, Liara looked overwhelmed. "I don't know how to lead. The best leaders never think they do," Dae-hyun said. "But you'll figure it out, and you won't be alone." Outside the chamber, the sun was setting over Velthara Prime. For the first time in years, the city felt hopeful. And in a small group standing together, humans and Velthians side by side, a new future was beginning. 6 months passed. 6 months of rebuilding. 6 months of change. Dae-hyun stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of Velthara Prime. The scars were still visible. Damaged towers being repaired. Gardens replanted. But something else was visible too. Hope, purpose, unity. Below, human engineers worked alongside Velthian architects. They weren't just rebuilding structures. They were building something new. A partnership between species who had learned they were stronger together. Footsteps approached behind him. Liara joined him at the railing. Her patterns glowed soft gold, the color of contentment and peace. She looked different now, still young but carrying herself with quiet confidence. "Trouble sleeping?" she asked. "Old habits. Soldiers don't sleep easy, even when the war is over." "Is it over?" Dae-hyun gestured to the city. "You've accomplished amazing things, Liara. The new consensus, the reforms." But Therix wasn't working alone. "There are others who want the old ways back." "I know. That's why we're forming the Joint Defense Force, humans and Velthians working together." Your promotion was unanimous, by the way. Major Daehyun, he smiled slightly. Still getting used to that, you'll have to. The alliance between our peoples is official now, signed yesterday. We need good leaders to make it work. Speaking of which, how was the ceremony? Long formal, everyone wanted speeches. Liara's patterns flickered with amusement, but meaningful. For the first time, Velthians and humans stood as equals, not temporary allies, true partners. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city wake up. Ships moved between towers, citizens headed to work. Normal life slowly returning. Hanul appeared in the doorway behind them. She looked healthier now, fully recovered from her injuries. Morning, thought I'd find you two up here. Can't sleep either, Daehyun asked. Too excited. The medical exchange program starts today. Velthian doctors learning human techniques, human doctors learning Velthian biology. It's going to revolutionize healthcare for both species. You've worked hard for this, Liara said. We all have. Hanul joined them at the railing. 6 months ago, I was treating a dying alien girl in a firebase medical bay. Now I'm helping coordinate interspecies medical research. Life moves fast. Do you regret it? Liara asked quietly. Everything that happened. The danger. Hanul getting hurt. All of it. Hanul didn't hesitate. Not for a second. What we did mattered. What we're building now matters. Worth every scar, Daehyun nodded. She's right. Sometimes doing the right thing costs, but the cost of not doing it is always higher. A communication device beeped. Liara checked it and smiled. Captain Yoonji is here, and she brought guests. They went to meet their visitors. Yoonji stood in the reception hall with a group of human officers. She saluted when she saw Daehyun, though her eyes were amused. Major. Good to see you haven't gone completely diplomatic on us, Captain. How's Firebase Nexus? Rebuilt and running better than ever. Your decision to protect Liara inspired a lot of people. Recruitment is up. Morale is higher. Turns out doing the right thing is good for everyone. Liara stepped forward. Captain Yoonji, thank you for coming, and thank you for supporting us when it mattered most. Yoonji smiled. I'll be honest. I had doubts at first, but Daehyun showed me something important. That sometimes the human thing to do and the smart thing to do are the same thing. They spent the morning in meetings, planning the Joint Defense Force, coordinating training programs, discussing how to integrate human and Velthian military tactics. During a break, Kelrix approached Daehyun. The old warrior looked younger these days, reinvigorated by purpose. I wanted to thank you, Kelrix said, for showing us that loyalty isn't a weakness, that compassion isn't illogical. My people forgot those truths. You reminded us. We're all learning from each other, Daehyun replied. Your people's coordination and telepathic abilities, our adaptability and stubbornness. Together we're stronger than either species alone. True, but there's something else, something uniquely human. You don't give up on people, even when logic says you should. That's a strength the rest of the galaxy needs. That evening there was a celebration. Nothing formal. Just people gathering to mark the beginning of something new. Humans and Velthians mixed freely, sharing food and stories. Daehyun found himself back on the balcony as the sun set. Liara joined him again, this time bringing 2 drinks. She handed him one. Human alcohol mixed with Velthian fruit juice. Hanul created it. She's calling it a friendship cocktail. Terrible name. Great idea. They drank in silence, watching the lights of the city come on as darkness fell. Finally, Liara spoke. Do you remember what you said when I asked why you saved me? Because you needed help, such a simple answer. But it changed everything. For me, for my people, for the relationship between our species. Her patterns glowed warm gold. I was dying in those ruins, abandoned by everyone. And you walked in and decided I mattered. Why? Daehyun thought about it. About all the reasons. About his lost squad. About human nature. About the choice everyone faces between cold logic and compassion. Because that's what humans do. We're stubborn, irrational. We refuse to accept that some people are expendable. Maybe it doesn't always make sense, but it's who we are. Liara smiled. A Velthian elder told me something yesterday. He said humans are the first species in galactic history to risk everything for someone who wasn't their own. That we're reckless and emotional and often illogical. And then he said that's not a weakness. That's a strength the rest of us forgot we could have. What did you say? I said he was right. That watching you refuse to abandon me, watching Hanul take a hit meant for me. Watching humans choose compassion over survival calculations taught me something. that the strongest thing any species can do is care about others even when it's hard. Behind them, the celebration continued. Laughter and conversation in multiple languages, the sound of different species learning to understand each other. "What will you do now?" Liara asked. "Now that the alliance is official and the Joint Defense Force is forming?" "Same thing as always. Keep moving forward. Help where I can. Train the next generation. Make sure they understand that leaving people behind isn't an option. That's very human of you." He smiled. "I'll take that as a compliment." Hanuel appeared with more drinks. "You two are missing the party, come on." Kelrix is teaching human soldiers Velthian combat techniques. It's hilarious watching them try. They followed her back inside. The celebration had grown. More people arriving, more species mixing. Someone had started music, a blend of human and Velthian styles that shouldn't work but somehow did. Daehyun looked around at the scene. 6 months ago, he'd been a lone soldier scavenging ruins. Now he stood in a room full of people from 2 different species working together, celebrating together, building something new together, all because he'd made one simple choice: to not walk away from someone who needed help. Yoonji raised a glass. To unlikely friendships and stubborn soldiers who don't know when to quit. Everyone drank. Then Liara raised her glass to humans, who showed us that the galaxy is big enough for compassion, that survival doesn't have to mean leaving people behind, that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is care. More cheers. More celebration. Later, much later, when the party had wound down and most people had left, Daehyun found himself back on the balcony one last time. The city slept peacefully below. Guards patrolled, but these were guards protecting something worth protecting. Liara joined him. She didn't speak, just stood beside him, her patterns glowing softly in the darkness. Finally, she said, "Thank you for not walking away, for showing me and my people that there's another way. You did the hard part. You chose to change, to fight, to lead, only because you showed me it was possible." The sun began to rise, painting the sky in colors both species found beautiful. A new day, a new beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy, other conflicts raged. Other people needed help. The universe remained dangerous and uncertain. But here, on Velthara Prime, humans and Velthians stood together. Not because they had to, not because it was logical or efficient or strategically sound, but because one human soldier had refused to walk away from an abandoned alien girl. And sometimes, in a cold and calculating universe, that stubborn human compassion was exactly what the galaxy needed. The end.